Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Seems like we were just together a few hours ago. So, gonna follow up to a live stream I did late my time yesterday for the private channel. This one here will also be for the private channel, but I've posted the link to the broader Slack group. So, hopefully, we get some other folks join and can listen in on some of the TA and some of my thoughts here on this recent action. If you caught yesterday's stream, hang tight. I'm going to kind of reiterate some of the summary in terms of the BTC upside targets and some of the patterns that we were watching. And then we'll look at some specific alts that I'm looking at. So as I mentioned yesterday, I'm leaning heavily towards the alts at this point. I think BTC is strong right now overall. The momentum shifted yesterday. We're still at this point only bouncing, but the underlying technical for the near term, I'm thinking we'll set up some good swing trades, some good potential entries here, but certainly not ready to just FOMO high risk 100% yet. Okay. So it's still relatively risky, but it's looking positive. But we need to see further confirmation, and we will get that over time on the daily charts. But certainly, I'm cautious about buying the big breakouts. I'd rather wait for some pullbacks and some pauses. I'm thinking we'll see some. We've had a pretty strong move in BTC over the last day or so. I think we'll see a little bit more pullback, but we saw a pretty good breakout overnight on the shorter term time frames. And so let's take a look at that. Let me see here. We got some folks coming in. Let me pop up my other window here. If you have questions, throw them out on the Slack or on the Google chat. I'll be checking the Google chat first, so post them there if you have access. If not, the Slack is fine too. So let me pull up my other windows, and then we will get right to it. Let me see here. Some questions. Yeah, throw some TA questions my way for sure. With price moving and continuing in one direction with supporting volume, what does supporting volume look like? So, okay, cool. We'll look at that. How high do I think BTC dominance will go? Initially I was looking for and I will go into that. I was looking for about high 40s, 50% by April. And I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. And I was leaning heavily BTC. I'm still in that camp relatively, but near term, I'm thinking we're going to see a little bit of a counter cycle, and we'll see some alts outperform maybe for a couple of weeks even. And maybe this is it, right? Maybe the BTC dominance peaks at 44 or whatever it was. Certainly possible, but I was looking for a little bit higher of a peak on the dominance, and we might still get it, especially if considering that the dominance is a heavily weighted towards the bigger alts. And so if ETH, Ripple, Bcash don't keep up with BTC, but some of the small cap alts outperform, you'll see the dominance continue to rise. And I'm leaning more towards the smaller mid cap names, right, as opposed to ETH, Bcash, and all that. But I am holding some Litecoin, some Neo now, and stuff like that. But it's kind of a mixed bag. But there was just some way oversold stuff out there. We needed to bounce here. So let's get to it. I think we got enough folks on the call. I'll answer the questions. I'm thinking we'll cap this probably about 40 minutes or so. And I'm going to be doing a broader YouTube update today. And then I'm not sure if I'll go live for YouTube yet. I'll definitely go live by tomorrow, though. So first off, let me clear some of this here, make it a little bit cleaner to read, and then we'll get to my analysis here. So over the weekend on Friday, I had posted we were looking at a potential falling wedge on BTC, and we've clearly broken the upper trend of that. And when I posted that, we were testing the upper trend, and I thought, hey, maybe we get one more leg to the low or the mid 7Ks over the weekend, and we certainly did. And the alts, we all know, have taken quite the beating during that free fall. It felt like free fall. We were moving exponentially lower. When I start to see that kind of action, I'm thinking, okay, we're due for a bounce, or we're near a temporary low at least. And we have seen a pretty strong rally. So this is the pattern I was looking for, was this falling wedge type of pattern. And there was a couple ways to look at the downside on this. This is on Binance. It's pretty similar on the other exchanges. And so first off, looking at the double top, let me change the colors on here so the lines don't get too crazy. The double top target, right, was around 70 mid 7Ks. And so the way you could do that is you could take the top down to the neckline and you project that down from the breakout point. Let me straighten this out. And you take that down, and that was projecting. Let me do a log on this here because it does change the picture a little bit, just because it factors the percent moves a little bit. But in and around this 7K on Bitstamp, it was projecting like 73, 74. And so that was kind of the range, that mid 7, low 7s is, the area that I was looking for, 74 down to like maybe 72 or so. And that was the downside target on that double top. The resistance point or the support point that we were looking at here. Go to the daily charts. Sorry about that. If you go to the daily chart, the last big support line on a closing basis was right here between 77 down to around 75 or so. And so if you look at that, that would have put us there, also in line with this, also the low end of this potential falling wedge. And so when you see a confluence of so many support levels, horizontal levels, trend line levels, all kind of really congesting in one area, it was a pretty good shot that we were going to see some support show up below that 7,700 range or so, down to around 72, 73. The ultimate low, depending on the exchange, right? This is Binance. It was basically around 7,300. Some of the other exchanges, real quick, let's go to those. Bittrex bottomed out at 7,330. Bitstamp came down to 7,325. And so all in all, we were right there in that zone. And so once we started seeing some good upside momentum, we're breaking out above the falling wedge. Yesterday I said, hey, this is still just a bounce. I want to see some upside confirmation. It feels like the momentum has certainly shifted though, so I'm feeling more confident. But you can see here that we basically bounced right into that daily declining 10 EMA. And to date, that's where it has failed every time. And so now you got to get a little bit more cautious. But I'm seeing a couple of things that are setting up here. And so upside target, I probably shouldn't have cleared that wedge. Let me see if I have it. Okay, I'm looking at some other stuff here. I had some indicators set up, and I'll go through those specific charts here. Here we go. Let me go back. All right, all my alerts are triggering here. ICX, I had Quantum, and I was looking at Quantum, and then getting ready for this call, and I get all these alerts. It breaks out. It had a very nice move just in 30 minutes. So we'll get to that here in a sec. I just want to show you guys some upside projections. So looking at the wedge projections, right? If you take a conservative view of the wedge here, what I was looking at is from the breakout point around 97, 9,800. And let me zoom into the 4-hour to show you some granularity. You can see that lines up pretty good with some of these key resistance points. So that would be right here, right? You can see these two peaks, and that lines up pretty good with that. So let's put a little mark there. And then you figure, okay, what if this is just a fib bounce? Let's do a fib retracement on just the bounce. And you go from peak to peak. 382 level is around 9K. That's the first test that I'm watching right now in terms of near-term resistance. Actually, the first one is where we're at now, but I'll go into that here on the double bottom. But then above that, going into the 618, which is 10K, I don't expect it to get that high personally, at least not straight in one shot. We'd have to see some pullbacks, but you think if the falling wedge targets around 97, 98, big resistance is going to be around 98, 99. The 618 level is around 10K. And so it really sets up a pretty clear area of this is where if it rallies this far up, maybe this is where we see a pause or some good profit taking. So going into that 9,600 or higher is where I'm going to be watching as the big test. But that's, that's still a ways up. It depends on if we can get above some of these other levels first, of course. But if this rally continues, and so far it's looking pretty good. Let me bring the volume back in. Volume has been pretty strong off the low, not mega strong like we saw in the February climactic bottom, but I still believe that was a good near-term low. And if this turns out to be the low, and we set up a higher low on the daily pattern, that's going to be very good. It's going to be very positive in the long term, just because it's going to keep this overall positive trend of higher lows. And it may turn out to that, hey, we're starting to build a big accumulation zone here over the next couple of months, going into this, kind of in and around this range here. And I know that's a huge range, but in the big scheme of things, if we start to build a big base around here over a few months, that would set up a real nice accumulation zone from which, later in the second half of the year, we could launch from. Of course, one day at a time, okay? But so near term, just to summarize, I'm thinking we're going to see some more upside testing. The two targets I'm watching here is at 9K and then the 97 to, let's call it 99K or so, right? 9.9K. So those are the two ranges, and I'll kind of summarize these in a chart when I'm done here. But that's what I'm looking at from the upside. On the near term, if you're still not in, if you're looking for confirmation, it's good to be cautious still, because we're basically bouncing right into that 10 EMA. Like I said, right, we've had a good rally off the lows. We were crazy oversold on the alts. They're rallying strong, but at this point, BTC's bouncing into the 10 EMA. So it's still good to be a little cautious. But here's what I'm watching here as a potential today, basically, right? The next few hours, next, few 4-hour bars. Let me clear the volume here. By the way, the volume here at the lows was pretty positive, right? You can see this is a 4-hour chart, very strong move right through all of this resistance, breaking the downtrend clearly. And this really happened in 1 hour. If you go to the hourlies, you can see, this is a 1 hour, 7% move. You can see from peak to peak, right? That's a 9% move. By the time it closed, it was still over 7% in 1 hour. And then we flagged out all evening, all night. I had some conditional buys on some of the alts, breaking out, good volume on that breakout, pausing a little bit now. Let me see how RSI is looking, still holding strong. On the 4-hour, RSI is around 60. That seems to be where they peak out if it's going to start turning around. But we're still, the bull momentum index that I've put together here is showing some positive signs, definitely confirming the strength. Certainly not yet on the daily, but this is going to be the last thing to turn. On the 12-hour, it's not quite in the bull zone yet, but again, longer term time frames turn last. On the hourlies, still very strong all around. So we're still seeing some good positive confirmation. Now, on the current price action, a couple of things I'm watching here. You can see we had this dip here, and then we had this most recent dip followed by some very strong bullish volume off the right side, and that's going to form a really nice double bottom. You're also seeing some slight, not huge, but some slight RSI divergence on those two. You see the low here came down to 76, this most recent low to 73. RSI was slightly higher on the second go around, but what I'm really liking is the fact that the RSI is pushing much higher now, right? It's trying to live in a higher range, and that tends to be, you don't want RSI living sub 60 when it peaks out, because that's still kind of signifying some bearish tone. When it starts going above 60 and only bottoming out around 40 or so, the bullish momentum is shifted. And so that's what I'm looking at here. And so price-wise, if you're not in, I'd be looking at this as a potential conditional buy, right? Basically where we're at right now. So you can see we had this support tested over the weekend. It broke down. We rallied right into that. That was a new resistance point. Rallied. Here we are into that again. So that 8,600 range is become the next battle line that we're watching. And so that's what I'm looking at. So if you're not in, right now, or if you have additional capital you want to deploy, here's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be watching this little zone for a potential pullback over the next, few 4-hour bars, maybe a dip back to the 10 EMA, so maybe around 83 or so. And if it just sits tight for a little bit and starts to break out, then clearing that 86, and if you want to be conservative, 8,700 at this point, you're talking small percents, right? You're talking 1.5%, so no big deal. Clearing above that and closing strong on volume, that's going to signify a good break of this resistance. And then I think we'll start testing that, those next levels that I'm looking at to the upside. So near term, that's the price action to watch on the BTC side. Now let's take a look at some of the alts. So for those of you that are on the private channel, I posted some conditional buys yesterday, both to the upside and the downside, because I was thinking, well, this thing could dip one more time and test it, or it could just break out here. Looks like we got the breakout, which I'm completely okay with. And so one of the buys was Cardano, came in from the USD pair. Let's go to that over here real quick on Bittrex. So the volume here is real strong, but again, this is just testing the 10 EMA. So we have not seen full confirmation yet, but I'm liking the action. This thing was just way overdone to the downside, in my opinion. It needed to bounce. So I took a shot at that one. This was the breakout point I was watching around that 17 right here, basically. So got filled there. So far, it's rallying. So that's what I'm. Now my stop's going to be, just kind of below this range here. So around 15.5, 17 or so. Or you can take your stop on the BTC side now. But watching this one has so far just rallied right into resistance. Makes sense that it's in a pause here around, it's in a pause here around that 18, 19 cent mark on the USD pair. But I'm still watching this as a potential breakout above that. Then we could see a pretty decent little rally here on Cardano. So that's one that I jumped on. Litecoin, I jumped on that twice. Got a first a buy here when it was flagging out yesterday, and I was watching this, and so picked up some on the pullback there, and then I had a conditional order on a potential breakout above 167, 168. We're seeing that now. That was a smaller order just because on the breakouts, I mean, they're a little riskier just because you don't know if they're like a fake breakout or I can't watch like RSI and other things, and I'd rather buy when there's a little bit more technical momentum. So, but it's still looking pretty good. Momentum's there. It's just a normal pullback at this point, but I gotta watch that RSI, see if it can go higher here. But this one's still looking pretty good versus BTC. It's okay. I'd like to see a little bit more strength here, but I was in cash yesterday, so I was looking for a few entries to come in at from the USD side. So picked that one up. NEO was another one picked up here, and that was on this break above 68 here. So up a little bit, but just kind of watching this one. The flagging pattern was looking pretty good overnight. Most everything was kind of doing this, kind of consolidating that recent move. So we'll see if it can show some follow through there. I was looking at some dip plays. We didn't get the dip, at least not yet, but I've closed those out. So now I'm just watching this. Ethereum's the next one I'm watching for a potential breakout here. This one is really flagging out. We'll see if we can hold, but it's also resistance there. Maybe we'll get one more dip before it decides to bust through. But if you look at FBTC, this one was just way overdone. I'm thinking this one's going to start outperforming near term. And so that's what I'm watching for, at least a little bit of a bounce play. I mean, this is still just completely oversold. There's some news on ETH being dumped. And, if ICOs are going to be more regulated, and there's a ton of companies that hold hold ETH from their ICO, specifically EOS, right? They raised over $1 billion worth of ETH. And that was a concern back then, is like you're going to have all these big companies that are going to hold a ton of ETH that they use to raise capital, and they're going to eventually have to sell some of that. And if EOS is going to be competing and want to be the Ethereum killer, then they kind of have an interest in eventually dumping all their ETH, right? So we're hearing reports of potentially that happening, and so this one might be under pressure for a little bit, but it's just very oversold near term. I'm thinking we see a little bit of a bounce versus BTC. We're seeing some signs of accumulation happening here. So watching that one. ICX was one I was really liking here. And I was watching this on the breakout. Unfortunately, I missed that. Some good volume came in right on the breakout. It's still viable here, in my opinion. It's only 2% down to the breakout point, so kind of negligible in the big scheme of things. But the reason I didn't jump on it was because of this. And you guys know I've shared my entry strategy here. When I start seeing the RSI drift, and this is what, right, like that. It's kind of wedging higher, but RSI is drifting lower. I tend to shy away from those breakouts, and I would just kind of wait. If I didn't catch the initial breakout, I mean, right? This is where I wanted to get it. I didn't get it. But when I started watching it, it was up here. And I'm thinking, I'm going to wait for a little bit of a pause or a pullback, let this RSI cool off a little bit more. We're seeing some of that. It's starting to kind of roll over a little bit. Momentum has shifted. I think it's still good. I'm just being a little bit more precise with some entry points here. So I'd rather just pick up some BTC on the dip and then look for some entry points on Icon here. But all in all, it still looks pretty good here off the lows. Just a normal pullback, in my opinion, at this point. Quantum was one I was watching, and then it just totally broke out on me here. So while I was getting ready for this, but I had a line right here, and I had my alerts set. And I was thinking this is a nice secondary entry point on Quantum, a good little flag being set up. And then doing some other things. I come back to the charts and I hear all these beeps going off. I'm like, oh, well, there it is. It broke out. So it's up about 6% or so, or maybe not even that much. I mean, if I would have jumped on it, it would have been, 6%. Yeah, from there. So not too bad. But at this point, I'm going to just wait now just because those little extra 6-7% matter, especially if you want to keep a tight stop on things. If you like Quantum long term or this is more of a swing trade, that's certainly viable here, in my opinion. Just the volume off the lows has been very bullish. It's trying to clear that 10 EMA. This is probably the strongest volume we've seen in months, and so got to pay attention to this. I'm liking the way it's setting up here. Let me go to some other exchanges. Quantum on Bitfinex, pretty good volume on the lows, pretty good strong volume, and probably again the highest buy volume going back to the February low, and then before that, some of the action we saw back in here. So there's some positive action showing up here. So this one's looking pretty good. Didn't quite, this is the breakout secondary entry points here on the USD chart. I was looking at the BTC chart, but you can see it's just stair stepping its way up, and so you look for those secondary entry points there. IOTA was another one I mentioned yesterday that I was watching here, and this one's broke out already. You can see IOTA USD just continuing to march higher, very strong off the lows. Found that good support around that psychological $1 mark. Had that big pullback, came right back to $1. That was the big prior resistance points back here. Had that big rally before the big breakout. Just totally retraced it and finding some support there. Very positive. That's a good sign. And so I'm thinking we'll see some more upside momentum on IOTA. It's been very strong here. It was one of the early names to start moving when I was watching the charts on Free Fall Saturday. This one was kind of bucking the trend a little bit here first and starting to move higher. And, off that, I mean, at the extreme lows, if you're brave enough to buy it there, you're already up almost 30% on some of these. So that's pretty good. Tron's another one. Again, this one I'm waiting to see for a little bit more of a precise entry point. Again, same rationale, RSI, just kind of letting the RSI on the 5-minute cool off. But big picture, you look at Tron. This is Tron USD bouncing right into that 10 EMA. But going to Tron BTC, similar story there. Let me go to Binance. Go to the 4-hour chart and just real strong off the lows. Let's see if it can pull back. And that's the level I'm going to be watching to see if we get a little bit of a retracement back to that 10 EMA / breakout point. I'd feel a lot more comfortable picking it up at those levels with the tighter stop versus chasing the breakout highs here. So let me go to my list here. What were some of the other names I was watching? I was looking at Tron. We talked Quantum. Oh, EOS. EOS has been crazy strong here in the last few hours. So look at that volume coming in here. Go to the 1 hour chart. Just very strong. I had that little, this one was lagging initially. You can see it was there, but then just on the breakout, just tons of volume came in. A little bit overdone in the near term, right on the 1 hours and the 30 minutes. So I'm going to give it a little bit, at least maybe it flags out a little bit or something. Here's the RSI 5 minutes starting to diverge a little bit. So that's why I don't chase them. I'm perfectly fine letting them go or just being patient and seeing if I can get a second entry point when I start seeing this type of action show up. So no big deal if you miss a few percent. I'm still leaning more so toward the risk aversion side still, even though I'm feeling a lot more bullish near term. I'm still somewhat risk averse, guys. Gotta protect the capital here. That's the name of the game always, right? Is preserving capital. So let the pullbacks happen. Looks like BTC is having a pretty good pullback finally, was what I was looking for. So let's see how this plays out. Right now, that's the level to be watching here. So if it can pull back to that breakout point and hold 8,400 right now is probably a good place to look at it, or even down to 83s. And then you stop basically below this range, because if it breaks out and then breaks below the flag range, then good chance we're going to see a dip back down to test the low here around 78 or so. Still fib on this real quick. So the 382 is going to be the low end of the range there. So that's probably the level I would put my stop at. So just below that. So 81.50 or so. If it doesn't hold 83s, and then below that, we'll probably test, this little breakout bar here around 78, 79, or 77 or so. So we'll see. Finally, the dip though. Finally, man. That's what I was telling you guys yesterday. Don't FOMO into this. Like, be patient. We've had some strong moves, but you tend to see that off the lows, and so I'm not just inclined to rush right in. But this is a good little pullback, so I like this pullback right here. This is kind of what I was looking for a few hours ago. I was wanting to see this pullback back to this breakout point, and then give it a little bit of downside room, potential further pullback in. But holding 1 hour 10 EMA, 4 hour comes all the way down to 82. That's okay. That'd still be all right. But again, see, we got to see some more follow through here today. It's going to be an important day in terms of, was that the low? Today's going to be very important because that was a good marker at the bottom. If we see some further upside, it'll be very positive. Otherwise, it was just a bounce. Maybe. Good tradable bounce, but probably just a bounce. So let's see here. Do I like Tron long term? Not yet. I'm mixed feelings on that. They talk a good game, but I'm just I'm not convinced yet. So we'll see. I wouldn't be against picking some up here though, just because it's had that big pullback. It's still a little bit overvalued in my opinion. Go to Tron. I mean, Tron's still a $2 billion market cap name. That's a lot. But then again, so is Cardano, right? $4 billion. That's a lot. But that's come off the highs quite a bit. I mean, Cardano at one point was in the 20 or 30 billion market cap range. Cardano at the peak was, 31 billion, 32 billion. So certainly much more attractive here. And I like that one long term. Are they overvalued a little bit still? Probably. A lot of these names might be, but we'll see. I mean, if they can compete with ETH or some of these other names, then they've got a lot more room to go. Let me see. Stellar was another one. Let's take a look at that one. That one was looking pretty good. We'll get some alerts. Let me go see what they say. Something beeped. Stellar Lumens. Another one that was strong off the lows here. Let me go to the 4 hours. Had that rally. We're seeing a good pullback starting on some of these names. That's good, in my opinion. We were kind of expecting that. So this is the test. This is an important test here because we had the very strong move off the lows, and now it's kind of the test. Was that a good low? Was that the low? Or was that just a bounce into the moving average, which that's where it failed. So we'll see if that holds. Lumens still kind of flagging out there, looking all right. I think that was it. Let me go to my list here. I might have had a few more names. In summary, though, I'm leaning more towards the alts right now, just from a counter trend rally perspective. If Bitcoin's going to have a little bit of a break here and go sideways or move up, I'm thinking the alts might do a little bit better near term. I think that's it. Zcash was one I was watching yesterday. Let me see how that one looks. That big move off the low, maybe a good secondary entry point here. Zcash USD Tether. Was trying to break out a little bit ago, seen some pullback with BTC, but not too bad of a setup here. So if BTC can rally, they can see the volume coming back in here on this pullback. That was a nice secondary entry. He's trying to come off the lows now, so Zcash might be one to look at. And then again, this is more of a big counter trend rally, just because we've come back so far. It was just so overdone. And so that's mostly the play here at this point, right? There's not a lot of buy the strength play. It's just, yeah, BTC is dumping. I'm not too worried though, not yet. I was looking for this. I was waiting for this little bit of a dump here. We rallied right into that resistance point, remember? And I was actually hoping we would see some pullback first. I didn't want it to just keep going. Otherwise, it didn't feel sustainable, in my opinion. We've rallied right into this key level. And if this pullback holds that 81 or so and starts to kind of go sideways here, that's going to be a very nice double bottom setup with good volume off the lows. If it goes much deeper than that, I'm going to get suspect. And the most you're going to want to see this pullback go and still be positive is around that 78, 7,700. That's the 618 fib level, but that would also go on to form a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders from which we could see a good rally. So still the same neckline. So that's what I'm going to be watching. At this point, I'm not too worried. In fact, I'm thinking I might pick some up here if it looks like he wants to start turning around in the next hour or so, but we'll have to wait and see. That was a good breakout. I'm thinking the next level to watch is 81, 82. All right, let me see here. You're 90% alts. You're down a lot on BTC comparative. So here's what I would look at to do. If you're still 90% alts, it's going to be very selective, right? It's going to be which alts, because you're hearing already reports of names being delisted. There's still a lot of fear around the regulation talk, and if things are considered securities and if they become unfavorable and you can't trade them anymore, even if the project's good near term, you might see some more dumping of some of those names. My favorites right now are the platform plays, just because blockchain's not going away. And you're seeing more and more news every day of, even big companies adopting blockchain, putting patents, wanting to test it, wanting to use it. IBM, PayPal, Microsoft, supply chain names. I mean, just all of these names. And so I'm favorable towards the backbone of some of that industry, right? And so things like Icon, even ETH, Neo, IOTA might be a good long shot, because if they can actually do what they think they're going to try to do with the whole Tangle system, then that'll be huge. If they fail, then they're gonna fail miserably, right? It's kind of like binary on that one. EOS, right? They've got very ambitious plans. Let's see if they actually follow through and it's not just a big scam, right? Or a big attempted failure. So, but EOS is one that potentially could rival. Lumens is a platform, right? So that's kind of the ones that I'm watching here, and even some of the smaller names, ARC, right? Stuff like that, where they're trying to do some good things here, and maybe even Stratus. So those are the names that are kind of my favorites right now. And then beyond that, I still like the privacy names, but a little bit more selective on those. Monero, Zcash are probably my two favorites. And then from a currency payment type of play, I still think Litecoin has upside potential there. Obviously, Bitcoin. And so it depends on the alt that you're looking at. And what I would do is I would probably rebalance so that a good portion, maybe 60%, is in the stronger names. And you can still hold some of the other names, but maybe you scale them back a little bit. And if they go up huge, then you're good. And if they just totally fail, it's not going to be, a huge percent of the portfolio. Even if you're down on some of these names, you just got to remember that some of these names, maybe you picked them up when they were just way overvalued, and it may be a long time before they get back there. Or they may never get back there if there's fundamental changes or competition or something like that. So nothing wrong with just kind of rebalancing and looking at, okay, if I had to start over today, what would I rather hold, or what would I rather hold more of? And that's what I would be looking at. All right, so there's BTC dipping a little bit here. RSI coming down to the low end of the range. That's good. We'll see where it can hold. Another name that I like long term, I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this, that's Binance. BNB. Now, I know they probably, this is a little bit riskier, so I wouldn't go like 50% of the portfolio in this. But BNB, they're just doing a lot of things right. And if you want to participate in the ecosystem in terms of the benefits of crypto exchanges and some of that, they're doing good things. So I'm still liking this one long term. Buying BNB is kind of like investing in the company rather than in blockchain directly, right? But it's still a direct beneficiary, especially if they continue to do the right things and continue to expand their business. And if they go the DEX routes, that may be good, right? So I'm still liking this one from a longer term perspective for different reasons. I think that's it, guys. Let me see here. I'll look at the ETH chart again. Potential inverted head and shoulders. Yep. Agree with you on that. Covered that. On my Slack side, make sure I didn't miss anything. So there's a question on Cardano. Is there an explanation as to why the 4-hour RSI on the USD chart on Bittrex is quite a bit higher than the 1 hour? So let's go look at that. This was late evening, so let's see how it looked then. And then I will cover the LTC chart one more time, and then we'll go from there. So the 4-hour at that point, that was about right here. So it was reading around 45, 48 or so, give or take. And then on the 1 hour, it was, depending on where that was, let me mark it here. You say it was this bar here. So that would have put it anywhere between 56 to 67. So the question was, the 4-hour RSI is higher than the 1 hour and the daily. On the 1 hour, I'm not, so here's the thing, right? On the 1 hour, this is a shorter time frame, so it could move up and then down, up and down a lot faster. It doesn't look like it was lower here, though. It looks like it was a little bit higher. On the daily, though, that's a whole different ballgame, just because you're very longer term here. So this is going to be the last RSI to peak. And that's kind of how they work, right? They kind of work their way up. So 1 hours go up first, and the 4 hours and the dailies, right? But the shorter the time frame, the more it's going to oscillate back and forth. I mean, just look at the 5-minute, right? It goes from one extreme to the other. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And so that's the difference there. Let me go to the USD pair. So 4-hour here was peaking around 57, and the 1 hour was peaking around 60s or so. Yeah, so not sure. All right, let's do Litecoin, and then we'll wrap it up here. So far, that BTC pullback to 84 is what I was looking for, and maybe it holds. We'll see here. Good volume's coming in off that little low. I think that's all it was, honestly, guys. I'm not too worried. I don't get worried. Maybe. All right, Litecoin. So I'm hoping to see some Litecoin outperformance here. I picked some up on the USD side, but picked some up here first, in and around here, and then got a little bit on the breakouts. Seen some pullback action here right now. So my breakout was around that 160 or so, 158, 159. So we'll see how it plays out here. But versus BTC, if I don't see it start really, I mean, it's holding up at least, but I'd rather see this kind of outperform. Otherwise, I'll just have to move some of this back into BTC and just hold BTC until we see some other names outperform. But overall, I mean, it's not bad. The big picture still looks pretty good. Kind of in the middle ground here. The planning, when do you plan on public video? I'll be posting. Are you asking when I'm going to do my next YouTube update? If that's the question, it will be today, later today, in a couple hours maybe. And then when I'm going to do my face reveal, probably by the end of the month, honestly. At least to the Slack group. I gotta go get a haircut first. Not that I have a whole lot left. I'm just kidding. It's not that bad. But all right. I think that's it, ladies and gentlemen. John Smith here, Mr. Buzzbeer Geek. You just have like 5 aliases. All right. I think we covered all the charts. Let's watch this action today. We have the upside targets, the downside targets. I'm also watching ETH here as a potential maybe catching up breakout. ICX, I'm really liking this one here. So maybe that was the pullback I was looking for. And maybe it's time to jump in. So for those of you on the private channel, I will be posting some updates on trades, some stop loss levels, etc. here in the next hour or so. So, all right, everyone. I think that's it. So appreciate y'all joining. Let me go back to my comments, make sure I don't miss anything here. There's the chat. Would you sell Mise Go? Oh, let's go see. OMG. Well, I mean, if you didn't sell before it rolled over, at this point, it's actually at a favorable location from a support perspective. Definitely made a higher low, so this is a lower high here before rolling over. So it's kind of at a critical juncture in terms of support zone, right? You can see it had these dips down below. At this point, though, I probably wouldn't sell it if I was still holding it. I mean, I am holding some, just to be fair. At this point, I'd probably wait to see how it holds up around these levels versus BTC. It's held up stronger than some names. I mean, most names have that straight down curve. This is kind of sideways. So me personally, at this point, if I was, written it down, I probably wouldn't sell it yet. If you're not liking it as much anymore, maybe into a bounce, scaling out of it then. That's probably what I'd be doing. Is BTC viable now? I think so. I think in and around, this is the range I was talking about here. We rallied right into resistance, and so it's not a bad shot, but I don't think it's like super bullish yet either. And so I was talking about if we see a pullback down to these levels here over the next few 4-hour bars, which looks like we're seeing that finally. As long as the pullback's constructive, volume's not crazy selling, then maybe it's worth taking a little bit of a secondary entry here. My stop would be probably around, max, depending on your strategy. If you're talking swing trade or longer term, if you're looking at just quick trade, I'd probably max out around 8,100. more swing trade. 77 or so would probably be the max that I'd let it go. That could set up a nice inverted head and shoulders if we see that. But I don't think it's bad here. Just it's a normal pullback that I was looking for. And so I think it's favorable. The level to watch on the upside, if you just want to wait until this thing breaks out, that's fine too. Because I think if it can clear this 86 level with some good volume, you're going to see a pretty decent rally there. All right. I think that's it. You're not going to tell about me to the IRS? Oh, man, the IRS. Don't worry. They get plenty of my money already. Oh, death and taxes. All right. Let me see. Can you show an example of supporting volume with price increasing? Well, there's two ways to look at that, right? Volume is interesting. Volume is an interesting animal. At the lows, volume is your friend, right? Because if you see this type of action, let me clear this to kind of show you guys. You see this type of action where it's a big reversal, highest volume that we've seen in a long time. Let me go to the hourly, this might make more sense, right? That's a good sign. When you see the massive sell at the low and everyone just panic dumping, that's favorable volume. And then when you think, okay, maybe we're going to start to break out and it breaks this trend line with massive volume like we saw here, I mean, a 9% to 1 hour bar on way above average volume, that's good. At the end of a big run, when it's going higher, higher, and higher, you do want to see some volume come in on the little, like, after the pause and then it breaks out, like how we're seeing here, some good volume. But you don't want to see big volume like this at the reversal, right? Like we saw the next bar over. That's not good, just because it's okay, showing there's some profit taking right into resistance. Also, when I see volume show up after a big run, then you definitely want to see that as a potential sell signal. I don't think there's any examples here on Bitcoin. But at the end of a big run, if it's going up, 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 and then you see big volume at the top, that's usually the buyer climax, right? The exhaustion buying near the tops. And so those I don't like, and I tend to watch for reversal signals at that point and look for some selling action. I'm trying to think of an example here. We saw a lot of that near the peak here a few months back, but usually that's not good volume when it's going up and then up, 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 and then it just climaxes near the top on massive volume. That tends to signify at least a pause, right? You can see it here. This this big volume bar after a big run. I mean, we saw a pause happen, then we rallied, and then we saw some more big volume, big reversal volume near the top. And that tends to be near the tops. But generally speaking, if you see a trend where it's going up on big volume and it pulls back on lighter volume and it goes up on bigger volume, that's very positive. And that's ultimately the way you want to see it. And when the trend starts to shift, it does the reverse, right? It goes up on lighter volume and then it starts to pull back on big volume and it bounces on lighter volume and pulls back on big volume. That's the bearish side of it. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up and appreciate everybody joining. And we'll see you all on the Slack. Take care, everyone.